The skies above Valeth had always shimmered with soft gold and pale lavender. The air was warm, the soil rich, and the people peaceful. For 1,000 years they had known only growth and art, and learning their cities were like gardens built into the hillsides, their lives shaped by thought, not conflict. And so when the darkness came, they were not ready. The Karn did not speak, they did not demand, they simply arrived in black ships like obsidian daggers and poured out onto the surface in waves, teeth chittering, limbs slicing, buildings falling in seconds, screams silenced beneath armored feet. And still the Valethans tried to reason, they offered surrender, they offered tribute, they even sang the ancient hymns of welcome. But the Karn wanted none of it. Within hours, a continent was lost. Within days, their skies burned and their leaders fell one by one, taken by the swarm, as easily as leaves taken by wind. Desperate, the remaining elders turned to the Galactic Coalition, sent the emergency broadcast through the old channels, and the new begged for intervention, begged for soldiers, begged for anyone to come. They received only silence. The coalition sent sympathy and sorrow, sent policies and promises, sent delegates and delays, no ships, no aid, no weapons, because Valeth was too far, too poor, too unimportant to risk anything real, and the other worlds did not move. But Earth moved. Far from the center of galactic affairs, Earth was a death world, a place where gravity was heavy and storms were fierce, where beasts hunted in packs, and even the plants could kill, where every generation had clawed its way out of fire and ice and war to survive and build and fight again. And when Earth received the signal, it was not debated, it was not delayed, it was answered. No one in the coalition had expected a reply from the humans, and certainly not one so fast. No message, no request for permission, just a declaration received by every relay station across the void. This is Earth responding, we are coming. The Xarn continued their march across Valeth, unchallenged, harvesting flesh and burning the forests, preparing for full planetary consumption, when the first Terran dropships arrived, not sleek and silver, but black and brutal, shaped for atmosphere and fire, not elegance. They roared through the sky like falling mountains, and the Xarn turned their eyes upward for the first time, unsure. And the Valethans hiding in the ruins, those who still lived, saw shapes emerge from the smoke. Not angels, not saviors, but monsters of metal and fire, taller than any Valethan, broader than any Xarn, clad in armor that pulsed with heat and light, their movements sharp, their weapons humming with restrained rage. The humans spoke only to each other in short, fast bursts, language shaped for war, not diplomacy, and then the first shot rang out. A single Xarn warrior was atomized in an instant, and the war changed. For the first time, the Xarn fell back, not from fear, but from confusion, from the unknown force. They had never before met a species that hit back. And the Deathworlders advanced. The Valethans washed from the shattered balconies of what had once been their skyport, now a smoking ruin, twisted metal and scorched stone, all that remained of their welcoming halls, as the human dropships descended like firebirds from the heavens, black and jagged and loud as thunder, with no beauty, no grace, only purpose. And behind them, the wind carried the scent of oil and ozone and fury. They expected soldiers like those seen in coalition halls, tall and lean, wrapped in shining armor, with kind eyes and soft words. But what emerged from the smoke were beasts of metal and meat, giants in exosuits that hissed with compressed air and internal fire, their movements fast and brutal, each footfall shaking the ground, their armor scared and covered in symbols unknown. The humans formed a line without speaking, eyes glowing behind red lenses, weapons the length of full-grown Valethans slung low and ready. Every angle of their posture said one thing: we are not afraid. A Xarn pack approached, testing them, probing with claws and screeches, and ancient instincts honed from devouring hundreds of helpless worlds. But when they struck empty air, and in that same heartbeat they were cut down by the humans, who moved like predators, who struck like lightning, who did not flinch when blood sprayed or limbs flew. The Valethans had never seen death before, not like this, not in motion, not delivered with such efficiency. No words, no warnings, just the silence between heartbeats and then bodies falling. One of the elders collapsed in grief, overwhelmed, not just by the violence, but by the realization that these humans were not here to rescue them, not to comfort them or cradle them in peace, but to kill the enemy in front of them, no matter what stood in their way. More humans landed wave after wave, heavy ships cracking the earth. As they touched down, mechanized walkers clanking out behind them, drones circling above like metallic hawks. And still the humans did not pause. They spread out into squads, spoke in short bursts through the air, and began hunting. The Xarn reacted with confusion, their hive minds twisted by unfamiliar resistance. They threw their numbers forward, tried to overwhelm, as they had always done, but the humans adapted with every encounter, changed formation, used terrain, set traps, and every time they hit harder, faster, colder. The Xarn were not used to prey that fought back, let alone prey that enjoyed it. The humans laughed in battle, not mad laughter, but something deeper, something ancient, a joy that came not from destruction, but from defiance, from facing death, and saying, "Not today." The Velethans saw one human take 5 wounds and keep fighting, saw another use a fallen comrade's weapon without missing a step, saw 3 soldiers hold a bridge against 100 Xarn and never move back. And in that moment the Velethans felt something rise in their chests. Not hope, not yet, but something older, respect, awe, maybe even fear. The monsters from the blue world had come not to ask, not to discuss, not to negotiate. They had come to end this. And they would. The Xarn had never known defeat. Their strategy had always been simple: descend, overwhelm, consume, repeat. They were ancient, relentless, bred for conquest, each hive linked by pulse and code, each warrior born to destroy without mercy, without hesitation, without fear. And so when they met resistance on Valeth, they did not retreat, they did not question, they simply pushed harder. More swarms poured from their ships, from the fissures in the ground, from the sky itself, wings cutting through smoke, talons glinting in the fractured sunlight. They launched themselves at the humans, expecting the same result as always, but the humans were not like the others. They did not scatter, they did not cower, they met the swarm head-on, with steel in their bones and fire in their eyes. The battlefield became a storm of chaos and fury, explosions ripping the air into shreds, energy pulses screaming through the ruined streets, and still the Terran soldiers advanced, moving in perfect rhythm, covering each other, reloading without looking, every squad its own machine of death. A Xarn brute charged a human line, its body twice their size, its claws strong enough to tear through alloy and bone, but it fell before it even touched them, riddled with kinetic rounds, plasma bolts, and a single thrown blade that split its skull clean in half. The humans never stopped walking. In the trees above, the sniper team eliminated 10 Xarn scouts in 3 seconds flat. No orders, no shouts, just silent fury and focused execution. From orbit came fire, Earth ships joining the fray with orbital strikes that turned entire nests into glass. The sky above Valeth, now marked with a new constellation, the flaming wreckage of a Xarn cruiser cracked in 2 by a human missile fired from beyond the moons. The Xarn hive mind strained against the chaos. This was not supposed to happen. This was not in the code. The enemy was supposed to break and run, to scream and beg. But the humans kept coming, even when wounded, even when outnumbered, even when dying. They would crawl to the fight just to throw one last punch. One Terran sergeant was seen dragging himself across the dirt, both legs gone, holding a grenade and laughing as he pulled the pin and took 7 Xarn with him. The Velethans watched this carnage with wide eyes, pressed into the rubble, too afraid to speak. But something inside them began to shift as they saw humans fighting not for land, not for glory, not for conquest, but for them. The humans did not leave the wounded behind. They carried each other. They protected civilians. They shared food and water. And every time a child cried, they would kneel and offer a smile behind the mask. These were not conquerors. They were protectors, forged by fire and tempered by war, warriors who knew suffering and chose to stand between it and others. And for the first time in the history of Valeth, the Xarn broke formation. They retreated. The swarm cracked. The unbreakable had met the immovable, and the immovable had teeth. When the last hive burned and the sky cleared, and the Xarn fled into the void, leaving behind only wreckage and ash, the humans did not cheer, they did not parade, they did not ask for thanks. They began the cleanup. They sealed wounds and carried bodies and buried their dead side by side with the Velethans, as though no difference existed between the native and the soldier who bullet for them. The elders watched the Terran medics work through the night, guided by nothing but headlamps, and instinct patching torn flesh, lifting collapsed walls, building shelters from the bones of ruined towers. And when asked why the humans only replied they called for help, we answered. In the heart of the crater that used to be the central plaza, a single satellite dish was rebuilt using human tech, wired by hand into the broken remnants of a communication spire, and connected to the Earth fleet above. And for the first time since the battle began, a signal was sent outward into the stars. It was not encrypted, it was not hidden, it was not softened or wrapped in diplomacy, it was open and raw and true. The video showed the burned cities of Valeth, the children hiding behind Terran armor, the soldiers dragging civilians to safety while under fire. It showed the Xarn piled like broken machines, and the wounded lying beside their medics as blood flowed into the soil of a world that was supposed to be forgotten. And then came the voice, calm, clear, and cold. This is Earth transmission, open to all members of the Galactic Coalition, and any who would listen. We received a distress call from a world under siege. We responded. We found no coalition fleets, no relief ships, no ambassadors, no peacekeepers. We found silence. And so we answered in our way. We did not come for conquest. We did not come for tribute. We came because someone needed help, and no one else came. And now the galaxy must choose what kind of civilization it wishes to be. Because Earth remembers, and Earth does not forget. The message repeated on every coalition frequency, on every open channel, every station, and relay, picking it up and carrying it further until even the wealthiest core worlds and highest council chambers were forced to hear it. The Valethans did not ask for vengeance, only recognition. The humans asked for nothing except the truth to be known. And across the stars people listened. Some with shame, some with awe, some with fear. Because now the Deathworlders had spoken, and it was not with violence, it was not with rage, it was with purpose. A purpose the rest of the galaxy had ignored for too long. And the memory of that silence would echo louder than any war. The humans did not stay to be worshipped. They did not demand statues or songs or monuments. They stayed to rebuild, to teach, to train. They worked beside the Valethans until the first crops grew again, and the water ran clean, and the young no longer flinched at every sound of thunder. They taught defense, not dependence, resilience, not reverence. They left behind not only weapons but knowledge, strategies, tactics, hardened truths about the nature of war and the price of peace. And then when the skies were clear and the forests no longer smoked, they boarded their ships and turned toward the stars. The people of Valeth gathered to watch them go, standing in silent rows across the hills, their voices quiet, their hearts full. And though no words were exchanged, they all knew the same truth. The monsters from the blue world were not monsters at all. They were guardians forged in storms, raised in ruin, survivors of their own brutal cradle who had chosen again and again to rise when others fell, and to fight not because they enjoyed war, but because they refused to let others suffer alone. The Coalition held its emergency session in the gleaming towers of Central Command, where the delegates sat in circles of polished stone, their robes clean, their voices calm as they debated logistics, ethics, consequences. Every system tuned to their frequency heard the same soft, useless noise, the language of those who had never bled for anything. But the people of the galaxy heard something else, because the Earth transmission continued to spread, not because humans forced it to, but because the citizens of every world forwarded it, translated it, showed it to their children, and played it in the streets. On rim colonies where the Coalition had never sent ships, they whispered of Earth as the fire that walks. On trade stations where pirates ruled, they spoke of the black-armored Deathworlders who arrived with fury and left with silence. And on peaceful worlds like Valeth, they remembered the laughter of the Terran soldiers, the way they would fight all night, and still smile at the sunrise, as though even after everything they still believed in something worth protecting. Back on Earth, Command reviewed every report, every casualty, every image of the Xarn, and they did not celebrate, they prepared. They began what would be known simply as Protocol Zero, a set of orders never spoken, only written into the code of every warship and every outpost and every soldier trained under the new doctrine. Deathworld Protocol engaged. It meant that Earth would not wait for permission. It meant that Earth would not ask for aid. It meant that Earth would answer. It meant that if a single voice cried for help, and no one else came, then Earth would come with fire and fury. It did not matter if the world was rich or poor, near or far, known or forgotten. If the voice was genuine and the danger real, then the Terran Defense Corps would deploy, and they would not stop until the threat was broken or they were. And so they did. In the years that followed, the Xarn did not return. They ran, they hid, they fragmented, and died in the dark corners of the galaxy, never again whole, never again bold, because they had tasted the fury of a species that had been forged in extinction and had learned to overcome every disaster its own planet could throw. But the legend of the Deathworlders did not stop with the Xarn. When a mercenary fleet besieged the moon of Cheskurth came. When a bioplague tore through the green oceans of Seracia, Earth came. When slavers from the Rixen Void abducted entire cities, Earth came, and they did not come to negotiate. They came with purpose. The Terrans earned many names after that. Some called them the Black Flame, others called them the Silent Wrath, but most simply called them what they were: the last line. Because when the shields fall, and the politicians run, and the fleet turns away, it is Earth that answers. Not for profit, not for empire, not for conquest. But because once long ago they had cried out for help, and no one came, and they had learned the hard way what that silence cost. And they had sworn never to let it happen again. So now the galaxy watches the skies and listens for the thunder that means Deathworlders are on approach. Some pray for it. Some pray it never comes. But all remember the day Valeth cried for help, and Earth came with fury.